day of UX Tartu, the official side event of Startup Day. Startup Day, I believe you have already marked your calendars, 27th and 29th January 2021. So see you there next time, because this is my last day to moderate UX Tartu. But our awesome partners who are helping us to organize UX Tartu this week are Startup Day, Velvet, Startup Estonia, and the production done by RGB Baltic. Thank you. Thank you to our partners. Everybody participating, use Prella wisely. You have the nice environment to do matchmaking, to ask questions, to visit the virtual demo area where you can actually find a lot of interesting job offers from different companies and startups. So use the opportunities that Prella offers you. What else? Donation, yes. So as this UX Tartu this week is brought to you for free, then we kindly ask you to donate to Estonian Blind Union, which is in a very huge need of great user experience solutions. So that will help them to improve that. Before going to today's presentation, also we have had already 3 topics covered on not Thursday, but on Monday, we had Bilgi Karan from IKEA talking about real solutions for real people. Then on Tuesday, we had Valdma from Producement. He was talking about how to build things fast. Yesterday, we had Sami from Nordcap, who was talking about designing the future, strategic design. And you can find all these great speeches under Startup Day YouTube channel and easily access these materials there, so definitely use this opportunity. And tomorrow, like I said, my last day, tomorrow the stage will be taken over by Janno Siimar, and he will be talking to or giving the stage to the next speaker, who is Jamshid Alamuti. So what to do? You know, this is life. I will be here maybe next year. But today, I'm very, very happy to give a round of applause, a virtual applause to Jakob Rosin, everybody. Woohoo! He's a tech evangelist for Foxmate, and as a blind person himself, he really knows a lot about accessibility, and this is exactly what he will be talking about, user experience from the blind people perspective. Jakob, the floor is yours.
Hello. My name is Jakob Rosin. I'm the chairman of Estonian Blind Union and technical evangelist in Voxmate. I'm totally blind since birth, and my job usually contains a lot of accessibility testing and consultations on accessibility and usability from the blind people perspective. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how and what we do, how blind people use today's solutions, and what are the biggest issues there. We're doing this in a different way because of bad COVID times everywhere. I'm usually used to actually standing in front of the crowd. Never done this before, so apologies if something is off. Also, I'm not going to use any slides. It's just going to be me in this video window, so you can close your eyes, sit back and relax, and just listen, because I'm gonna mostly talk. So let's start with smartphones and technology, because actually I'm also a technology journalist. I've been a technology journalist for several years, and my passion is all of the gadgets and all the things. And lots of people must wonder, how would somebody who's blind use a touchscreen, for example, or a smart device at all, an iPad, for example. So that was a wonder about 10, 12 years ago as well, when more of smart devices were coming. Buttons, Nokia phones with buttons were going away, and everybody suddenly had touchscreens. And yeah, there weren't very many good solutions available. There were some third-party software you could buy to your touchscreen Symbian-based Nokia phones, if anybody remember those. It was an expensive piece of software, a bit of clumsiness in there, not very intuitive, and all it tried to do was mimic simulate arrow keys on the screen, so it could arrow down would be swipe down, etc. It was very clumsy. Because obviously the UI of Nokia's phones was designed to be visual. Not very good solution. Luckily, or not so luckily for some, they went away, those phones, and they got replaced by the iPhone. iPhone came out. It was completely, revolutionary, as you all probably know, and we were, blind people were left in the dark for a while because this device didn't work at all until the iPhone 3GS, which came out, and this included a totally new, another revolution, which has actually gone maybe from lots of people, they didn't notice it because they didn't need it. iPhone 3GS contained Voiceover. Voiceover is an Apple screen reader, which today is used in all of their devices. It's in Macs, it's in Apple Watches, iPhones, iPads, even HomePods, actually, because they have touchscreens. And this was completely built in. I could go to a store, buy a new iPhone, come home, set it up myself. I didn't need to use sighted people help to download software, install it on my phone, activate it, register it, and then be able to use it. I could just triple click home button on iPhone, and it worked. Now, still, those solutions have progressed, advanced to lots of other things. Today we don't have only Voiceover available on Apple devices. You can play with zoom levels on the screen. You can play with colors. You can also use voice to interact with your device. That's a new thing. Arrived, I think, last year. Voice control it's called. So it enables from the manufacturer or a software operating system level complete accessibility. The trouble here is that this accessibility is still a kind of UI overlay to the visual graphical user interface. The way VoiceOver works today is you do put your finger on a screen and it will basically read out to you what is under your finger at the moment. Is it an icon, button, slider, link, whatever? Yes, you have commands to, flick from element to element, so just swipe left, right, and double tap to activate. But yeah, it kind of still is based on the visual layout on the screen. And now that's a bit complicated for some people. It's not better on Android side. Android came on the accessibility stage some years later. They have a system called TalkBack, also built in, and by now works fairly well. There are infinite battles between Apple users and Android users, which is the better, but that's expected, and everybody does that. It wouldn't be fair if you wouldn't fight for iOS versus Android. But basically, the basics are the same on touchscreens. You will swipe. You will touch icons on the screen, and it will read it out to you, and then you double tap. That applies mostly for all the elements. Yeah. On computers or iPads, well, actually on phones as well, you can connect Bluetooth keyboards to them. Keyboard navigation exists. you get keyboard shortcuts, and on computers it's better because computers, come with keyboard. They have it built in. Keyboard is a natural way to interact with the computer, so you get lots of keyboard shortcuts, and this is all nice. So lots of blind people, well, all blind people mostly use keyboard to interact with their computers for various shortcuts. And I do it, for example, on iPad as well. I find that if there is a keyboard shortcut, it's faster for me to do this keystroke on the keyboard than to find the little button, which might be visible on the screen, and tap it. Because for me it takes time. I have to touch around until I find it, and I kind of know by now on most used apps where it is, but it still takes some time. So that is a big problem in the kind of user experience. It is not very it's not very horrible. It's learnable, and once you get it, everything is usable and happy. But not too intuitive from the person's perspective who hasn't used a smartphone before in their life. And it also usually brings on many additional clicks. For example, in unfamiliar menus, if I'm navigating with a screen reader and then keyboard, maybe there's a menu and I need to find a certain function in this menu. Let's say we have the other day I was trying to filter some results in a Google sheet, and I was looking for the filter function, and I had to go through all the menus. Like I cannot glance over the menu as sighted people can, and oh yeah, there's the filter function. I need to listen to all of the functions in these different menus until I find the filter one. There are searches and things which help it a bit, but again, not very intuitive. With voice-based solutions today, it goes better. I could just tell the computer or whatever device I'm working with that, hey, filter those results for me. If those technologies progress better, that will be a huge advantage, but still not the best solution, because I'm afraid that voice-based navigation mainly is going to continue to be clumsy, because you don't want to maybe talk to your computer or your phone in this manner, maybe in public, for example. And here's where accessibility comes again in, to make those things easier for blind people. Software developers have some tools in their developer toolset to make software and websites and applications accessible for the screen readers, because the screen readers, they don't visually look at the screen. They don't take a picture and OCR it or do some other fancy things. They look at the code, and if the code is badly written, which unfortunately it mostly is, I'm sad to say that, but unfortunately, yeah, there's lots of bad code around in terms of accessibility. So then it cannot read stuff. I might have an app which might look very nice. For a sighted person, there is no difference. It is the perfect application. But for me, everything in the screen just says button. Or it, even worse, or sometimes better, reads me out bits of code. And by now, I've got insight to the programmer's world. So sometimes, based on the bits of code the screen reader reads out to me, I can guess what it does. Very not intuitive at all. Like you listen to like a 20-second message to understand, is this button to open a menu, or does this button mean that the menu is open or closed at the moment, for example. So lots of time is spent on inaccessible software, making up workarounds for yourself, trying to figure out the most effective way to use it, And once you do that, you figure out a great way to use your app. You know the inaccessibility quirks and issues in the app. Then they will release a software update with design updates, and all your work is gone. You got to start from square zero again, learn it all again, because like Slack did it right now. Slack has updated its UI on the web and on the on iOS, and I'm having so much trouble to finding my channels, because I kind of knew exactly where do I have to tap on the screen to access different menus, and now they're all gone. They're in different places, and I didn't notice it. Like, I was wondering, okay, what's going on? Why can't I find my team channels? And I was in a hurry as well. I needed to quickly tell my colleagues something, and it just took me like 2 minutes to find it, and now I need to replace this pattern in my head to with a new one, with a new Slack. So not very intuitive. They made it. Slack is a good example. They are trying to commit to accessibility. They're trying to make it accessible, but the trouble we see here is that it is still, first we make it for the visuals, for the sighted people, and then we will make it work with the screen reader. So that's a common, and obviously this is understandable because we have more sighted clients. Whatever app we do, if we don't make this app for blind people only, then sighted people are going to be the majority. But that creates a trouble for blind and visually impaired people, because learning those solutions is quite difficult. What I mean is, as I've explained the works of screen reader and the smartphones, it's you to be able to use it, to be able to know all of its functions. Excuse me. You need to learn it. You need to have training. You need to or you need to be enthusiastic as I am, and spend hours on forums, reading, listening to podcasts, demos, etc., to find out all of the possibilities your screen reader have, all of the functions it's got, so you can have a good picture of, okay, this app is not very accessible. What are the options of workarounds? For example, Apple's Voiceover has this function to label items. So if we come back to the example of a beautifully designed app, which is very badly written, and the screen reader just says button, 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 I could technically go over with somebody sighted over the app and label each of the buttons myself. It does write a little tag in VoiceOver to the one of those buttons, saying that, okay, the user said that this button is a play button, for example, and later it knows that. But once UI gets changed, the button gets moved, VoiceOver is clueless again. And this function is great, it works for some extent, but you need to be aware of the existence of this advanced function. But maybe you are a 60, 70, 80-year-old who doesn't want to deal with that. They don't want to deal with inaccessible software, making up workarounds. They want it to just work. They want to listen to the radio, read the news, or access, whatever services they're using, podcasts or audiobooks or whatever. And today, for example, in Estonia, we have a big issue that we have no system to consistently teach people how to use the smartphones, whether you be younger or older, because the concept of visual overlays also is a very clumsy concept for somebody who's maybe 60 years old or 70 years old, has never used a smartphone, and then you give them and they're totally blind, and then you give them this glass square or rectangle, and say, okay, this thing has now icons in it. It has a grid of let's say 5 by 5 icons, so 25, try to find Safari. How the hell would I do that? You don't have the idea of visual keys in your mind. And it's very hard to teach those. Obviously, it's possible. Some people are more technically minded than others. Some people are less technically minded. And it takes time. And that's why we are doing also this donation here today for Estonian Blind Union, because we are the organization representing all blind people in Estonia. And we have in mind to start providing those trainings in Estonia for people who need this. But that's not the only one. The only thing we're doing. I'm part of a team from Voxmate, the technical evangelist over there. And what is Voxmate? Well, we're trying to solve the UX issues I've been talking about by coming to it in a totally from totally different way, actually the opposite way. So if I come back to the idea of Slack, then if Slack, makes Slack or anybody else makes an update, they will draw it, make it visual, and then make it accessible with the screen reader. Then we are kind of trying to focus on what we call a voice first user experience or voice first UI design. So what Voxmate is a platform currently in beta and on Android. The idea of the platform is to bypass and not need a screen reader on Android, because because the screen reader is designed to interact with the visual UI. But we completely threw the visual UI away. We don't have any visuals on the screen except if you don't want them, if you want them. So what we do is we have a platform where all navigation is done with just four swipes. You do either swipe down, up, left, or right. That's all you need to know, basically. And with that, you will navigate through the different layers of sorry. And through that, you will navigate in Voxmate, and the other component of Voxmate is what we call Voxlets. They are like little applications on the Voxmate platform, representing different services, representing different systems you can access, trying to bring it down to just the four swipes. For example, you could read news, you could listen to radio or audiobooks with just those four swipes. So I thought I would give you like a little demo of how it works, just so you get the idea of what's the difference. So first of all, I'm gonna show it on my iPhone, the way regular screen readers work. So you get the idea of the navigation. So I'm just gonna flick it to English. Usually they give it on Finnish, and Finnish for the reason that there isn't a good Estonian TTS available. But this is my everyday phone, my iPhone, and if I just touch the screen randomly,
messages, 2 unread message, overcast.
So it says messages,
messages, 2 unread messages.
I got 2 unread messages. If I browse around the screen,
food tracker, settings, day 1, Goodlands, Audible, voice dream reader, overcast, data,
those are all the apps I have on my home screen. And if I want to activate any of them,
dock, phone,
let's say phone, then I just double tap on the screen. But to do that, I need to know where this icon is, or flick around for a long time to get there. Now with Voxmate, what it is we do it, just by by those 4 swipes. And if I'm gonna I'm in the, let's say, Voxmate main menu, and if I'm gonna swipe down here, for example,
Entertainment.
which is it says entertainment. The idea here is that we categorize some of our Voxlets, those are like the services you can access, into categories. It's easier to find. What else is in the main menu?
Coronavirus pandemic.
There is, for example, a coronavirus pandemic Voxlet, because there wasn't a good accessible way to access the coronavirus statistics globally available. You just could listen to news and know what's over there. But we made the coronavirus pandemic Voxlet available, and just if I'm gonna swipe right on the screen,
Global state.
it says global state. I can swipe down here again.
Country data near me.
Country data near me.
Country data by cases.
By cases.
USA state data.
And get USA state data.
Global state.
For example, I swipe right on global states.
2.9 million active cases. 352.6 thousand deaths.
Right. So
2.4 million recovered.
what it does, it just reads out me the information. I could swipe up or down there to browse quickly to a certain bit of information.
Entertainment.
Or the same way you access news, for example. I'm on entertainment, swipe right.
Read the news.
First thing in the entertainment menu is read the news. I'm going to swipe right again.
BBC.
BBC, swipe right.
Top stories.
Top stories. There's a listing of different. So let's go down for fun.
UK news.
UK news.
World news.
Or world news. Gonna swipe right here.
Twitter tags Trump tweet with fact-checking warning.
1 of 28.
Get a list of world news in BBC at the moment. I can swipe down.
Minnesota violence clashes over death of black man in police custody.
Okay.
Hong Kong police arrest hundreds and fire pepper pellets amid fresh unrest.
3 of 28.
So what we do here also with our voice first UI, audio UI, sound UI, however you want to call it, is we use different characters of voices. So you could hear the female voice saying the news title and the male voice saying the 3 of 28. So what we try to tell the user here with the different voices is that this 3 of 28 isn't a part of the news title item. So when I swipe right now here, it will just start reading me the news article.
Figure, thousands of police officers have been deployed across Hong Kong.
Police in Hong Kong have arrested 240 people and fired pepper pellets amid fresh anti-mainland protests. Protesters were rallying against a bill on China.
So basically, now it just reads me the article. You could hear the male again say the image description in the beginning. And, this different voice characteristics can be used in for example, different games. You could have, you have different players, like we did this in our demo of Blackjack. Different characters have different voices and different TTS voices. Now, why we think it's very useful, or why we're doing Voxmate, is that it's very easy to teach. To teach using those 4 swipes on the screen is way more intuitive to people who may have never used smart technology before than to teach them the visual concepts of menus, icons, grids, swipes, cards, whatever you get, all those pop-outs. We try to bring it down just to those 4 or 5 swipes. We have some extra gestures there available. They are very simple. They are mostly shortcuts, trying to help you out. There are ways to record, send messages, preserve your memos, and the idea we're having is to adapt lots of other services to Voxmate as well. So why not maybe one day you could order Uber just with this solution, and the app in the background will do all the fancy work. I have currently I'm using taxis myself all the time via Uber or we have Bolt over here. The Bolt app isn't very accessible, so I very often find myself the app changing my location where I am by itself. So I order a cab to a place which I know, and for somebody who's blind, it's very important that the taxi comes where they know they will probably come. But if the app changes it without telling me, then I'm lost. The cab driver is lost. The cab driver is angry. I get fined by the app automatically. There are financial consequences, etc., etc., etc. And if I am outside in the rain or in traffic, which is very noisy, it's all very very complicated. So the simpler it is, the simpler the UI is, the easier it gets. You shouldn't try to make it too complicated, and you should try to think of a UI as a either than of your target group, as we did in Voxmate. We know that what target group is will be blind people, so we don't care about visuals. But if you build a application which is crucial or beneficial, like with the example of Bolt, who does deliver taxi transport services, but also does food delivery, which both are very important to blind people, because some of people cannot access online grocery store websites. Again, very inaccessible, unfortunately. But you need to have food. So I think it's very important to think of, first of all, accessibility in your applications or solutions you're making. Trying to code them in there in a sensible manner, test them, because I don't want to confuse you that with accessibility being immediately, if your app is accessible, then it's immediately usable. It might not be. There are incredibly accessible apps which are very clumsy to use. They, say too much, say too little. The buttons are not very clearly labeled, although they're labeled, so it's accessible. The app is laid out so that it's not very intuitive to grasp. The same applies to websites, for example. So the idea being here that you should try to think of being comfortable using this application, both with your eyes, without your eyes, and then in some cases, actually, there are other disabilities. There are people with mental disabilities who need better signing, for example, texts written out, simplified language, pictograms, etc. Deaf people need visual confirmations for audio cues, etc. So it's usually very very broad spectrum you should think about when designing something. And unfortunately, a lot of developers or designers leave out many target groups, as there are disabled people, people who cannot use maybe their hands to navigate the touchscreen. There are special devices, clickers available to use smartphones. What it does, it presents, you have a clicker in your hand because you cannot maybe touch, your motor control is affected. You have a clicker in your hand, you click it once, and the UI starts showing you a little square highlighting each control you can on the screen, and then you click it again and it activates it. And so on, to ensure that your software and whatever you do is compatible with those systems. Just first of all, it doesn't make it only easier for disabled people to use your services, but the studies show that if an app is made accessible, it usually affects all the users in a positive way. It's easier to find. It's easier to use. It's more intuitive. It's faster, etc. Why I slipped up with find there is it applies on websites that the SEO is always better when you make your website accessible. Because what it means if you make your website accessible, for example, is you just make it machine readable. And machine readable means, of course, that the screen reader can read it, that an eye tracking software can read it, for people who have motor issues. But also the search engine can read it. So the search engine can read it, tag it better, and you are easier to find via Google or whatever you're using. So accessibility benefits are big, and I think people who are who have a disability, they're very loyal to companies who dedicates their time on making their solutions accessible and usable for lots of different target groups. I've personally changed banks just because the bank where I am at the moment, LHV, has concentrated a lot of time making their apps and websites accessible. But the idea in there, why I would like to see more accessible apps out there, and accessibility being there from the beginning, not so that you come out with an app.
Coronavirus pandemic.
I'm sorry about that. You come out with an app, and then a blind person or somebody comes to you and says, hey, your app is not accessible, and say, oh, sorry, and now you will make it accessible. I think it should be accessible from the start, because I don't want to choose a service based on what I can use or cannot use. I want to choose a service based on the features it has. Maybe I want to choose Uber instead of Bolt, because Uber is maybe cheaper. Just an example. Or maybe I want to watch HBO because it has cool TV shows instead of watching Netflix or Amazon Prime. But I cannot because HBO is not accessible. It doesn't have audio descriptions, etc. So baking accessibility into your workflow is also less time consuming than it is making it as an afterthought. So if you build an app, you spend hours and weeks and months on building it, and then somebody comes and says, hey, it's not accessible, and you need to start doing lots of things all over again. But if you start making the accessible app accessible from the beginning, it will be accessible for it will be accessible from the beginning. It will be less time consuming because you just integrated it into your workflow. So try to think broader when designing. Don't hesitate to reach out to organizations, blindness organizations. Each country has them, many of them, experts available who are glad to help testing, who are glad to help with ideas how to make it accessible. And if you start designing hardware solutions, for example, don't try to be fancy. Everybody today that tries to make, because hardware is harder to make accessible. I'm just giving you an example. I have an intercom device at my house to dial a flat number that it calls the flat. It has touchscreen. I or any other person cannot use it. Any other person who's blind, because it's touchscreen. It doesn't talk because it doesn't have a speaker. It doesn't have a fancy enough software in it to be able to generate TTS, etc., etc. It's way harder. Buttons just do work. So let's do the Q&A. Let's see what you guys come up with. I'm happy to answer your questions and see what are maybe some of your thoughts. Gonna end this video now. Thank you for listening, and let's hope we just meet in live in a second.
Jakob, please conclude maybe the main three or main important aspects from your speech. What should the people take away?
Right. I think one of the main things to take away is that accessibility doesn't always mean usability. So you can make your software or whatever you're building very accessible, but it might be very usable to the end user or to the disabled user. It might not be intuitive because there are many skills, user skills in the industry. So some people are more advanced, some people are less advanced, and the more simpler you make it, the more intuitive it is, and the more easier it is to use, in your daily life. I think another point is to try to work with the target group. I think user testing is very undervalued and not done enough, because, for example, for accessibility for websites, there are automated systems available which can check the website for accessibility issues. And it gives you a long list, and you can, tick them off and fix them, but it never tests how usable it is. For that, you need people. I think it's very important to work with those people. So I think those are the main points you should take from here. Keep it simple, even for accessibility, but ensure that all of the functions are accessible at the same time.
Okay, so my next question from here would be, what are the main misconceptions that people have about blind people from the user experience perspective? Maybe it would be better.
I think, unfortunately, today's accessibility solutions, for example, the possibilities we can use are not very widely known. Developers may not be aware of Apple Voiceover, for example, or Android Talkback, or screen readers. How do they work? And then that's a conclusion that I've seen people make websites where they have, included a speech module, so the website speaks, which isn't, you're paying too much effort to do something. So I think one of the misconceptions is that the world is very limited. Actually, it's very okay today. There are many good solutions available. You just need to use them and make sure that those systems are compatible with the screen readers and the assistive technology. And another thing is that blind people are not using, maybe because of that, they're not using mainstream devices. Like I still get this question: oh, do you have like a special phone? I don't. I use a regular iPhone all the time. It just uses the built-in screen reading function.
And now also some questions from our audience. The Shield Stanford is asking, so software often relies on site-based terms such as view, see, quick look, etc. etc. Do you have any tips for UX writers on how to write more inclusively?
So, first of all, blind people use the same vocabulary as everybody else. We read books, we watch television, we say, that I don't see that, or I see, we still use the same vocabulary, and it's all fine. I don't find a big issue with that. There obviously is an inclusivity in there, which you could try to be mindful and keep the vocabulary maybe more neutral, but I don't think people will be offended by using a word like quick look or peek, because the idea, it carries like a idea what this function carries. If I press on quick look, it gives me like a fast, nice preview of whatever I'm gonna do. And for example, Mac OS, you can use quick look even for audio files. There's nothing to look in there. So I think it's more of a established term, and I don't think we need to destroy the established understanding of what those mean, and even like, okay, I wouldn't use words like click in touch interfaces, for example, because you don't click on anything, you just tap. But usually I think it's quite well understood what is going on. If we're talking about screen reader and accessibility UX, then there is a function in many screen readers where you can tell the screen reader to say some phrases. For example, you have like a special accessibility keyboard shortcuts. So in this case, implementing those into your software, then it would be okay to utilize. Like for example, if I am in an application and there is a play button, then a sighted person would just tap it once, but a voice or a screen reader user would double tap it. So in this case, it's okay to put the little tag there which says double tap to play. But in other cases, I don't think that you should alter your vocabulary much.
Okay, so Engin Kaban is asking more like a visionary question. What is the future for individual content creators such as bloggers, personal, non-corporate websites to be accessible? Will there be any kind of standardization enforcement for being accessible? What's your opinion?
Yeah, it's very hard to enforce independent content creators. Enforcing it on level of laws and then legislations. We're trying to establish this in European Union, for example, on national level and on public sector services and websites. It can't really force somebody who starts who starts vlogging at their bedroom, for example, to make audio descriptions available. I think in the future, in far future, because it seems rather impossible at the moment, utilizing computer vision, speech recognition, AI, and all that, we could start creating machine-generated audio descriptions, for example. So if there is a vlogger, they don't need to pay attention to the accessibility. The machine does it for them. The machine describes their videos. It already does captions. If you do it in English or in other big languages, YouTube can add automatic captions to the videos. So, I think we will see those automatically machine-generated accessibility solutions more in the future. I think they are very much as a very, very, very small and very not good at the moment, but we see the first steps. There is a plugin for Chrome, for example, or Chrome actually automatically does this right now. When for a screen reader, it sees a picture on a website, whatever news website or wherever it is, it runs it through the Google Vision APIs, and it generates automated alt text to the picture, which gets read out to the screen reader as a description. It's not perfect. Computers just give me some keywords of the photo. It doesn't tell me what's actually happening on there, but that's the first step towards automated accessibility. So I think that will be there in years to come.
Okay, maybe more some of these good examples of let's say UI from the accessibility point, some solutions. You were mentioning your experience with Slack, now with Chrome, maybe some other good ways to look at.
Well, I'm glad that big companies are taking accessibility more and more seriously. Google is ensuring that their services are accessible. We are in Estonian Blind Union and in Voxmate, we're using Google services as a backend to manage our documents and cloud and email and everything. But in the end, it's the choice of this person. What do they prefer? Some people and blind people would say they wouldn't like Google because of certain reasons. They would want to use Office. But for to bring on like good examples, there are many, and Facebook has made their systems accessible. They were one of the first. Well, they were the first who brought on their platform automated image descriptions as well, using computer vision, and this is really great. Everybody breaks it sometimes. Google had a YouTube bug a few days ago where Voiceover users couldn't rewind any videos. The bugs happen, and that's okay. But I think we have got to the point where many big solutions are accessible. Obviously, there are issues in other big. Like, I wouldn't want to say that everything big and mainstream is accessible. Like we have in Estonia we have Bolt we are using for cab rides and food delivery. This is not accessible, for example, to the blind and visually impaired users. We have services like Tinder, which are not accessible. We have Discord for recently. Well, it wasn't accessible. They're now working on it. So those things always are coming. The accessibility is spreading out. They're becoming better. I'm hoping that one day it becomes a standard. So if a new company launches an application, I don't need to be worried that will it be accessible for me. I would, I'm hoping that accessibility will become a rule.
Okay, yeah, that's a very nice way of approaching the future. I think it's reasonable even. How well is Tanel Peet is asking, how well is Estonian language supported in TalkBack and Voiceover? Do you have some good suggestions and things to keep in mind when developing apps in Estonian or other non-English languages?
Right, Estonian language is a tricky thing because Estonian is a rather small language, and big screen readers like TalkBack on Android and Voiceover on Apple are utilizing B voice TTS libraries, which mostly do not support Estonian. On Apple, Voiceover doesn't support Estonian at all. The closest you can get is use a Finnish text-to-speech. Finnish just pronunciations are very close to Estonian, so you just get used to the Finnish pronunciations of Estonian words. But on Android, Google has made an Estonian TTS engine, which you can use with TalkBack. You can use as an app developer if you want the app to say things. And I think TalkBack is also translated into Estonian. So if your Android UI is in Estonian, then TalkBack will respect that and say things in Estonian. But we don't have good voice recognition in like Google Assistant or Alexa or things like that in Estonian, unfortunately. So this land is still empty or closed for those who do not speak English.
Okay, yeah, that's a level of improvement that we need to have, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We can hope at least, for these things to happen.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
Tanel also asks, I think, a very nice question that we can end the QA session with. So he brings out that companies' apps often have visual identity, but should they also have auditory identity? What do you think about that?
I think it's a brilliant idea, and that's what we try to do with Voxmates as well. We try to make it sound unique. Today I've been doing the sound design because I'm one of my hobbies is to play piano and tinker with software instruments. So I tried my hand with sound design. I think it's very important for things to sound distinct and unique. And if you look at marketing, then audio branding, audio logos are very important. Because I also work with audio a lot, then I quite know the bigger sound libraries out there, and I can immediately tell, oh yeah, this developer has used this audio library for their US sounds, and they haven't paid attention, they just downloaded a bunch of files and then threw them in the app instead of having somebody do it. Although I'm sure somebody drew their logo because they didn't use a stock logo from I don't know, Google. I think you should pay attention, to audio, to notifications. If you listen to like lots of people's text tones, ringtones, alert tones in the applications, many of them do not serve their purpose.
I think that's very that's a field we need to concentrate more on, especially now that voice-based systems and UIs will probably be more popular. We are using our ears more, and we want to have those audio cues.
Thank you, Jakob, and thank you for a very useful and very interesting conversation that we just had, and also your presentation was excellent. Thank you. And
thank you so much.
And thank you everybody for your patience. I'm happy that we managed really to proceed with the QA, and we can bring all the good knowledge that Jakob has to you. And now let's wrap up today's day. Again, our sponsors who have helped us make this free event available to you: Startup Day, Startup Estonia, Velvet, and RGB Baltic. Again, please use Prella for matchmaking and Q&A for tomorrow, and also to search the companies in the virtual demo area. Please donate to Estonian Blind Union. You saw, how well Jakob knows the area, and he's very technically aware what should be done for a better accessibility solution. So I think that this donation goes into very good hands. So, also important thing to mark in a calendar, in your calendars, a special event for female founders or those who want to become one. So we will have a female founders meetup on 17th of June. And everybody who is a female founder already or interested in becoming one, then you're all welcome to join these intimate discussions. It will be a very nice event series. Tomorrow, as I said earlier, I will be not joining you, but Janno Siimar is taking over the moderator position here, and he will be talking to Jamshid Alamuti from B-School. So Jamshid will be talking about his experience from the design and user experience perspective. And at the moment, we already have our side event, IXDA, the mini conference about the topic of looking at the bigger picture happening. So please go and join this event. And I think that so we can wrap up this very good day and the very good presentation we had from Jakob for today, and see you in the future. Thank you. Bye.